ready to be inspired by the great things happening in rural education. The Rural Scoop will bring you new ideas and innovative solutions. We'll dive into education issues and we'll highlight what's working in your rural communities. You will hear from a variety of educators, administrators, professionals, and others who will provide relevant and engaging content in each episode. And now, serving up the scoop, here's your host, Dr. Melissa Sadorf.
Welcome back to the Rural Scoop, the show where we dig into what's working and what's needed in rural education across the country. Today's guest is someone who's shaking up how we think about time, leadership, and technology in our schools. Christian Jackson is a tech entrepreneur and the founder of Edapt, a company focused on making AI not just accessible, but truly practical for educators. He's also a national speaker and thought leader, and I'm thrilled to announce that he'll be our keynote speaker for the 2025 Arizona Rural Schools Association Annual Conference in Flagstaff. So we hope you are able to make that. So today, Christian and I are going to be talking about how AI can be reallocated into what he calls time dollars, back to student-centered work, and how automation can ease the heavy compliance burden rural schools face, and why thoughtful implementation matters more than just shiny tools. So we're also going to dig into what's ahead for rural schools and how leaders can think smart, but also think big when it comes to AI. So Christian, I'm so glad to have you on the show. Welcome.
I'm honored to be here. I'm excited for this. I'm excited to be with everybody later this year, and I'm excited to talk about all the stuff I nerd out about on a daily basis.
Well, we're going to give you about an hour's worth of nerding. So, but let's get started at the beginning. So if you could give us a sense of your journey, how did your background and experiences bring you to this unique intersection of education, technology, and entrepreneurship? Because it's a very unique intersection.
It is very unique. And honestly, I gotta say, I think it ended up being a very blessed situation how it all worked out. I'll give the quick rundown about myself, which is I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, California. My quick background on upbringing is my mom moved out from Atlanta to be an educator, a speech pathologist actually, and my dad grew up. Oh yeah, and my dad actually was an actor. So those are the two influences that are pretty major in my life. And long story short, around high school age, I started to become more of a global-minded citizen, I would say. I got way more involved in news and how policy affected people. And I started some political organizations to try to raise awareness for some of the things I thought were important. And ever since then, I've kind of had the through line for the North Star of my work, which is end goal for me is try to help historically redlined communities get better educational and career access. And all of my work from the time I was about 18 through college through now, I think kind of tracks that way. And the way that technology and education came about was at my core, I am just a very curious person, and I'm very curious about technology. And since a young age, I've been researching what tools can make my life a little bit easier. How can I automate those things in my day that aren't the most fun? Like, I just moved, and I just bought these things on Amazon that automate my shades going up and down in the morning. So when I wake up, there's no excuse, and the sun's going to wake me up anyway, right? So those little things like that, I'm always trying to find those little areas where things can make my life easier. And that ended up throughout college. I was very involved in a lot of the tech spaces to the point where I was actually going to graduate and go into the venture capital space, really looking into climate technologies. And that didn't happen. I ended up doing something completely different when my professor at the time asked me to come work with him for a year when I graduated. My professor was actually the founder of Kinko's, and he was really involved in the early childhood education space. And as a result, I got to meet a lot of educators, from county superintendents to superintendents, principals, teachers. And the meetings I would have with them were a little bit different than I think a lot of people's entry into education. There was a lot of conversation around what's not working, what the systems are that feel broken, what's taking the most time. And myself, being with the background of I'm curious about what's not working and how we can make it work better. I'm very much so a systems-minded person. They would invite me into their offices and show me their student information systems and how reporting would work. And one of these superintendents, her name's Dr. Amy Alzina at Cold Spring Elementary. She basically noticed really quickly. She said, "Hey, you're a pretty sociable nerd. Could you help my teachers understand how to use these technologies and how to use AI to help open up capacity and help differentiate materials for our students?" And that went amazingly. Full transparency, this is springtime of 2023. I did not know that that was called PD. I just went in and I did it, right? And a couple of weeks later, Dr. Alzina said, "Hey, that went great. My teachers usually do not like doing that, but they liked you a lot. Could you come do this for the small school district association later this year?" So later that year, I spoke in front of superintendents from across the state, gave the rundown of what artificial intelligence was. And believe it or not, I did not use AI to make my presentation. I made it myself. And that's led to a whirlwind of me really just learning about the education space and what the needs are and the pains. And I think the reason why it's worked out really well is that natural curiosity that I have is the reason why I know so much about the technologies. It's the reason why I read so much about them. But it's also the reason why I got up to speed pretty fast on the ins and outs and the complexities of education in the back office side. So we'll get into a lot of my work and what we're doing right now, but that's how everything came about. And it is hard, as a young person going into a space and trying to tell people how to do their job better. It usually doesn't come well from somebody who's in their early 20s. So a lot of it comes down to framing. A lot of it comes down to actually caring about the work that we're doing and helping decrease the digital divide. And I think everybody I've worked with so far feels that and understands that, which is why things have kind of taken off as they have.
Yeah. You've been really deliberate about how you talk about AI with educators. And I'm sure that that was probably a part of how you approached that PD experience 2 years ago. So what exactly are you doing, or how are you thinking about framing it when it comes to introducing AI in school, especially in a way that feels doable and not overwhelming for people who are already in our rural communities wearing 5 different hats and they're worried about what's going to happen at the football game on Friday night and all of the things. So how do you approach that?
I mean, we've seen it in the last 20 or so years, if not more. Every time a new technology comes around, it's like, buckle up. We gotta go learn something brand new, right? And the difference here, the big difference here is this is maybe the first time ever where we've had a technology that can inform you how to use it and can bend to your will, per se, right? So my framing on this, like you said, when I talk about AI to educators, is I actually like taking AI out of the conversation. So I'll start with this empathy. Like I ask, if the district gave you an assistant or an extra assistant tomorrow, what are the first things that you're offloading to them? Not mentioning AI whatsoever. If you're talking to a department, it's what are the things that you're most worried about for next year? What are the biggest projects that you think are going to take up the most of your time? Or what are those death by 1,000 paper cut tasks in the middle of the day? And once I get an understanding of that, then I can show how AI can plug in to those problems that already exist to help make the lives easier, earn some time back for them. And that right there is where you get the big win. Because like you said, small school districts around the country or rural communities do not have the support that they need. They generally do not have the funding that they need. Definitely do not have the staffing that they need. Talking to the superintendent not too long ago, he said, "Listen, Christian, I need you to come help us learn how to use AI because I know 4 staff members that are retiring in 3 months and I only have the budget to hire 2 back. How do I get 4 people to do the job of 2? And by using the lens of AI of let's look at what the situation already is and see where it can plug in to assist, that removes a lot of the discomfort around having to learn a new technology. And it proves the case that, hey, you shouldn't be feeling like you have to go learn ChatGPT. You should instead be feeling like, let me go see if ChatGPT can help with this. And that mindset shift, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about today and how we can actually get there. But that's really critical. And that comes down to a lot of just me having conversations to understand the exact pain points of that unique area.
Right. It's interesting. We talk a lot in rural about how we innovate out of necessity, and every innovation starts with a problem. And you're touching on that right now. What was it? And I'm going to step into where you are as an entrepreneur. What was it that pushed you to create Edapt? And what was the gap that you were seeing in school systems that made you say, hey, there does have to be a better idea, along the same lines as that superintendent that you were talking about? There's got to be a better way. So why Edapt?
It's because there's got to be a better way. That's what it comes down to all the time for me. And even inside of Edapt, I'm always talking to superintendents about there might be a side problem that they're running into and trying to figure out how to fix that for them. Edapt came as a result of having a conversation with the superintendent. And she said, hey, listen, my inbox is flooded with AI tools from my teachers and from my students. Don't see a lot about tools that can help me. So how can you help me? And that came down to a conversation of what are the big time sinks that they have, right? And there's a ton for all the small school district leadership. I mean, you're, like you said, you are everything from the superintendent to the principal to the bus driver to the janitor to sometimes you're the substitute teacher, right?
Right.
And with that being the reality, what ends up happening is the day-to-day of the job in the back office starts to stack up and pile up. And the first thing that we talked about were grants. And I remember I came back to her and I said, hey, this is how I would think I would tackle grants with AI at scale. And she went, you know what you should look at instead is this thing called the LCAP. And in California, the Local Control Accountability Plan is really called just the District Improvement Plan. And we know that this document takes hundreds of hours every single year for the school district to complete. And the North Star for the document is fantastic. How are you using state funds to best support your most at-risk students? And what you're planning to improve and help them out more going forward? The unfortunate part is, like so many compliance reports now, is it's a lot of data entry, a lot of narrative entry. And instead of it being something seamless where you can just report the data in and then let the strategists and the experts, which are the superintendents and the assistant superintendents and everybody in the back office who know the school district needs, instead of it just being a brainstorming document, it becomes a let me just get this done document. So Edapt came as the result of us hearing that that was a problem that was taking people away from doing the job that actually mattered, which was being in the field with the teachers and being in the field with the students and having time to sit down and research what are the research-based best practices that might work for my district. But instead you're sitting behind a desk typing out paragraph upon paragraph upon paragraph. So that's where the problem came from. And the solution that we ended up coming up with was, let's figure out a way to ingest that information as quickly as possible. And then we're going to be able to give you a first draft of that document after maybe a 30 to 60 minute conversation. And the way that we do that is we take in all the public information that we can about the school district. Anything that we don't have access to, we ask from the district. And then it's just, hey, there's data that just lives in between these two ears.
Right.
Let's talk about it. And let's put that into a narrative for you so you can bring it to your leadership, your county, or your state department to help streamline that entire process. So all in all, it came as a result of there's got to be a better way to do this. And the this in that case was compliance reporting. And that goes for state, federal, and even grant reports that we have to do.
Yeah, I love that. You've said, because I've heard you, that AI isn't about replacing people. And in a rural system, there might not even be any people to replace, but it's about giving people back their time. So what does that really look like for school or district leaders? Can you paint a picture of what that reallocation of time can mean on the ground? I mean, you're talking about hours and hours and hours saved on an LCAP, but what else can it look like?
It could look like, let's look at the example I talked about before. I talked about budget constraints for that small school district. How can two people do the job before? Some people can interpret that as, maybe we're not going to need as many people in the office in the future. That's generally not the case. If I were to sit down with any of the leaders listening to this right now and just list off the names of people in your office, you could probably tell me why you hired them, like what the big need was that you wanted them to get focused on. And now maybe a few months later, they're not doing the job you hired them for because now everyone's wearing different hats, right? So what getting time back for all of your team members really looks like is all those small putting out fire tasks that we have to do every single day, all those administrative tasks that really do not further us, but are more of like patchwork from today and in the back, but not really forward future looking. We want to utilize these tools and learn how to utilize those tools to get that work accomplished so that you have more time to do the brainstorming work on what practices can we implement in our district, or how can we better utilize our grant matching funds, and what programs can we invest in to maximize those funds. That could be a 2-3 hour exploration. Most of us don't have 2 to 3 hours to just block out and chunk out in the middle of the day. So if I can showcase to you how to earn back, I mean, my target is 5 to 7, 5 to 10 hours a week. But if I can get you even an hour and a half back, if you have some other priorities that you know you would love to focus on, as soon as I start to show you how to chip away and get a 5 to 10 minute email done in 1 to 2 minutes, 10 times, well, that's an hour and a half almost you have back. Right. So that's what that looks like on the ground. I think at the end of the day, the main question to ask is, if I removed all the barriers for my team or for a specific team member, what is the work that they could accomplish? And what is the work that I would want them to accomplish? And I think that's the question every great leader has to ask, especially in this age that we're moving into going forward. I struggle with this in leading my team. We're a really small, scrappy team. But how do you get the most out of everybody? And how do you empower them to get the most done? And this is an amazing tool we have at our disposal to do so. We just have to make sure it's implemented properly and then also implemented safely.
Yeah, good point. You had a white paper that you asked me to take a look at, and I loved it. It was very, very intriguing. And one of the concepts from your white paper that really stuck with me was the idea of time dollars. So for those that may not have heard that phrase before, can you walk us through what that means and why it matters so much, especially for rural districts that are operating with, as you said, those small, lean teams?
Well, going back to the concept of time dollars, every minute that you spend on something, every hour you spend on something, there's a cost associated with it. It might not feel like it, but there is. And the way that we talk about time dollars is all of those cumulative hours over the course of the school year that are spent on tasks that could otherwise be spent on more important work by that administrator, by the teacher, by whoever it is in the school district. That is a time dollar, right? And we want to make sure, because budgets are tight, that we're getting the most of all of our time dollars that we have at our disposal. I think the improper framing of this that we've heard in many ways is there is a real thing called the efficiency trap, right? And we're trying to maximize and always be more efficient. I think this is the wrong way to look at it. The reason why I like the framing of time dollars is all of us have a limited amount of time, and that's perfectly fine. When we wake up and when we look at our to-do list, we should just recognize we're not getting everything done on that to-do list, right? But how can we ensure that for the tasks that are on that to-do list, how can we get them done a little bit faster, right? And the way that we kind of stumbled into this was doing the work that we've been doing in California with compliance reporting. We know, and this is just a great example, this report should not take 60 to 300 hours. And across an entire team, it might get up to 1,000 hours to get this one report done. That's an expensive report, when you look at it with time dollars, right? That first iteration of that report should be done within 1 or 2 afternoons. And then from there, you should be able to take that to your board, to your community, and say, hey, what do we think about this plan? How can we improve it? So more of your time is spent on the interactions with the community, interaction with the real people, instead of it just being, I am drowning in paperwork. I am drowning in just typing words into boxes on a screen. That is not the important work that we want to empower our team to be doing. We want to empower them to think deeply about the work it is that we're doing. But right now, the way that we're doing it, we might not be. Right now, the way that we are asking our educational leaders to operate, let me phrase that another way. Asking our educational leaders to spend time digging up the numbers that are already available and rewrite sentences in a way that sounds and reads a little bit better. I think all of us know that is not how we want to maximize our teams. They might be very important for compliance and making sure that we're checking off the boxes that we need to check off for legal reasons. Like, that is extremely important. But we have tools at our disposal now that can help us do that much faster. And if we can get those time dollars back and reallocate them to, I say this again and again, just because it's been the biggest discovery for me, is just how difficult it is for our educational leaders to have time to research what works, to find different ESSA practices that might be better fit for their districts, having conversations with other superintendents about what's working for them. A lot of the work that we're doing that is great work is siloed, and we're at a great opportunity now to reallocate those time dollars to be able to spend more of that time doing that work. So that was a very long answer. I know it opens up some additional questions in there too, but.
So let's jump into something that I'm thinking about as you're talking about this. So you've done a lot of work in California with systems and systems thinking, and you're starting to explore, I think now, how it can be translated beyond that state. So when you think about a state like Arizona, where 65% of our districts are located in rural communities, what do you see as the biggest wins for AI when you're talking about easing that compliance burden that our leaders are operating under?
Same situation in California. About 2/3 of our school districts are in rural communities as well, small rural communities. I think the most straightforward answer to that comes down to what I've said already, which is all of us know in each of the states. I had a call this morning with the superintendent up in Michigan. They have compliance reports they have to do, and they have a completely different system to get them submitted and to get them written out. In Arizona, my work so far, even though it's early for Arizona, looking at the systems that you all have, I see it as essentially the same. And the reason that I see it as the same as what we're doing in California is no matter the platform, no matter the login, you're still really being asked to report on data that you have to go copy and paste from a different source or run enough to report on from your student information system that you're utilizing and then go take it to somebody else. Or you're being asked to write narrative about what that data showcases and how you're looking to improve in the future. The unlock comes in, I want 90% of your time being spent on the brainstorming what solutions will work going forward. I do not want that time being spent on running to go find reports, running to go to your vendors to ask them to give you the information because some of it might be blacked out. And it definitely should not be spent parroting information between two different parties, right? None of us enjoy that work. So if we can have a tool and a system that does that for you, which we have access to now, and you can spend more time being the expert. I always like to say AI's core goal and the way that I teach it for our school districts is making the experts better experts. If I can give you more of that time, back to the time dollars concept, more of that time dollars is being maximized in each district. I mean, that's going to remove a lot of the stress and a lot of the pressures that we have ongoing because we can go into work and be like, you know what, I'm doing exactly what I signed up for when I came here in the first place. A lot of the job by nature in education is putting out fires that arise day in and day out. But if I can give you just a little bit more water to put those fires out a little bit faster and get back to the work that you enjoy doing, spending time with your team, being creative thinkers about what's going to work for our unique demographics in our district. That's the unlock. And I think especially in rural communities, we're all extremely unique. We're all extremely unique.
Yes. Yeah.
And giving you more time to appreciate the uniqueness of that district in your community and interact with them in a way that helps build better forward-looking plans, that's the win. So a lot of it comes down to just making the experts better experts and giving you more time to do the job that you signed up for in the first place.
Let's talk about getting started. For a rural school district that is curious, but they're being cautious about AI, what's one or two low lift, high impact ways that they could start experimenting or start utilizing AI tools right now?
Great question. Great question. So I hinted at this before, but whenever I go to a district the first time, I usually try not to mention AI immediately. What I do instead is I find those strategic ties between
Mm.
what your teams are struggling with currently and then how a tool could plug in to help. So a good example of that might be your teachers are worried about a new curriculum overhaul. Maybe you switch curriculum providers. So now you're going to have to do a cross check of what existed and what's new. And then go look at your state standards to go figure out what you have is new. And then you're going to have to research some supplemental materials to pull into the new. That's expensive. That takes a lot of time. Going back to time dollars, you might have to pay a few teachers over summer for multiple months to go do that work.
Right.
If I can instead show you, hey, here's how you can, in a data secure way, take those curriculums, cross-check them, identify and run them against your state standards, department by department, to see what you're checking off, what you might be checking off, but there's some gray area, and then what you're missing. I mean, I probably just saved you a month. And that's not an understatement there, right?
Right.
And that's at the organizational level, but even getting down into the classroom, you're going to hear what the teachers are struggling with, which you've already heard. But there's something to be said about you asked me, you listened, and then you gave me a fix really quick. That turnaround time, and this is what I suggest to superintendents, is if you can get that turnaround time down, you're going to impress them and you're going to get light bulb moments. So that's number one. The strategic ties point allows you to then do the overarching part, which is you got to make this comfortable and you have to make it practical. The specialty, and what we'll talk about at the conference a little bit more too, is most people are still pretty trepidatious about AI, right? Especially in education. There's a lot of, I believe, healthy fear around the tools. How is this going to impact critical thinking? How is it going to impact creative thinking? How is this going to lead to potential supplanting of teachers and administrators, right? I think all of those are good fears to have. The problem comes when there is so much discomfort with the conversation that practical solutions and next steps cannot be had. You have to have conversations about it because it's here. It's going to continue to grow. And those conversations matter right now more than ever. They should not be pushed out into next year. So the first thing is making it comfortable. And I think you make it comfortable by, number one, being honest about it. Whenever I go into a district, I say, our end goals, our North Stars are the same. It's to get you more time back in your day. And it is to make sure that your students are best equipped to succeed. That's been level set. Now, tell me why you don't like AI. And then we have a conversation about it. Because the excitements and the fears both need to be shared. And then the job on my behalf, and I think on the leadership's behalf, is you want to move everybody who's open to learn to being rabidly excited about learning and implementing it and getting to use every single day. And you want to shift everybody that's fearful to being open to learn. And you do that with those practical solutions that you came up with from finding those strategic ties in the very first step.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to approach it, because in conversations that I've had with educators, they're concerned about surveillance, they're concerned about job loss, they're concerned about the idea that machines are going to make human decisions. You know, those are all things that are concerns for them. So I appreciate that framing, and hopefully that's a way that superintendents can move forward when they are having, and they do have to have them, those conversations, because people are afraid. They do have that fear around AI, especially some of our less technology savvy teachers. And, you know, that doesn't mean older teachers. There's a lot of veteran teachers that are very comfortable with AI, and there's some younger that are just not quite as comfortable as we would think they would be, having grown up in a digital world. So
you have to approach this with the humanist view. At the end of the day, and I'll give you my generation for an example. I want people to be healthy. And I want people to be healthy mentally, I want them to be healthy and comfortable financially, right? So what is the world that we want to be building as a community, as a country, as a world? That framing for me means two things looking historically. Number one, my generation, I just turned 25. My generation, Gen Z, and the generation under me, Gen Alpha, you could even argue the millennials as well, right? We grew up inside of social media, like quite literally inside of it. Yep. And we still, to this day, because we did not have open, honest conversations about this technology and what it meant, we instead shunned it and removed it from the classroom. Just recently, we started having digital citizenship conversations in the last several years. Because of that, we don't think about it. Every single time we open up Instagram, we are quite literally activating the same device or the same mechanism in our brain when we play slots. It is a dopamine hit. Every single time you refresh Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, download this Facebook, it affects all of us. Are we surprised that we're all more anxious now more than ever when we're playing slots all day, every day? Right? Not to mention, we don't really think about how our digital footprint is going to be growing on every time we post on social media, right? We just weren't trained up to be conscientious users of the technology.
Right.
And my fear right now is that if we put our heads in the sand or try to ignore it and not talk about AI, we're going to be graduating another class of students who, you know what, they probably are going to opt to use the tools and not think critically and instead shortcut their learning. The key to all of this is to make sure that we have the same North Star. We want to equip our students and our young people in this country to be the best equipped to succeed going forward. And we do that by educating ourselves on the tools that they're likely going to be utilizing when they graduate and when they go home, and make sure that they are conscientious users of the technology. So yes, they know how to use the tools, but they also know how the tools are using them.
Good point. And that, I think, leads into that ethics conversation that you were touching on, where ethical use of technology is something that has to be taught. It is not intuitive. So
it's not intuitive. It's not intuitive. IBM did a study of executives. I think less than half said that they believe. 96% said that their teams utilize AI to a significant or moderate extent every day at work. 47% said that they have good implementation or ethics skills, or believe that people have good implementation or ethics skills. And I would argue that number is lower.
Yeah, that's not a good return.
No.
So you spoke at AASA at the National Conference on Education just recently. And one of the things that you focused on was thoughtful implementation. And I love that phrase. So what did you mean by that? And how can school leaders ensure that they're not just grabbing the next shiny thing that might not actually solve the problem that they're trying to get at?
That is such a great question. And I think if somebody listened to the last 40 or so minutes of this conversation, a lot of that thoughtful implementation piece is discussed. But you said something really critical there, which is how do we make sure that we're not just grabbing the next flashy thing? There's a really true balance, right? On one hand, I'm telling you, you want to be up to date on all the new usages of these AI tools. On the other hand, you don't want to end up in the same trap of this too shall pass by showing a new tool to your teachers every single day, right? So the balance that I like to communicate is, let's figure out those 1 to 2 tools that you know are going to be really helpful for your district, right? And there might be some adjacent ones that are AI powered that might help differentiate materials, help with communications, and you might allow your team to utilize them, but your focus is on those 1 to 2 that are enterprise that everybody has access to. That does a lot. So let's just look at ChatGPT, Gemini from Google, and Copilot from Microsoft as examples. Those can be rolled out across the organization. Those tools get updates, if not every week, every 2 weeks. And there's always something new happening with them. The reason that's important is that the thoughtful implementation piece comes down to, you want to make sure that you use those strategic ties I talked about before to make sure that everybody in your organization can identify 1 to 2 ways they can utilize that tool every single day. Because if they're utilizing it every single day, the likelihood of them seeing something new or seeing the new pop-up of what's been released is significantly higher than if they're just not looking at it, right?
Right.
And that by itself increases the percent likelihood that you're going to have sustained implementation. I think the other part of that is if you're focusing on one or two, the fact that there are updates to them so consistently, it gives you enough to go on to help make sure people are up to speed about what these tools are the most capable of. There's a lot of great tools out there that are not the major players, that are not the big generative AI locations. But if you can focus on those 1 to 2, again, I'll just go back. It's usually ChatGPT, Google Gemini, or Copilot because it's just worked into the workspaces that already exist. You're not forcing your teachers to go to another website. And the reason that's important is I do my darn best to make sure that we're not hopping from tab to tab whenever I do trainings. Because there's something to be said about the drop off in usage when you have to go click on a new tab.
Yeah,
right?
Sure. Yeah.
So that's part of it. That all ties back into the strategic ties part about figuring out what problems it is that you're solving. But if you can have those problems solved, majority of them, by those 1 to 2 tools, that's where that thoughtful implementation comes in, because end goal here has to be, you want your teams to know how to use these tools long term. You don't want it to be like a one-time training or a semester initiative. You want to empower your team, and this might be by using some pioneers inside the district who are teaching the other peers. You want to make sure it's sustained. And I like to call that evergreen learning. We've been rolling out a model with the school districts, which is we train the trainers. And the first time you hear something new, sometimes it's great to hear from somebody outside the organization. But the second, third, fourth continuous learning part, that's generally going to be from a peer, and you're going to want to hear from a peer who's struggling with the same things every day that you are.
Yeah, good point. You use a lot of vivid metaphors when you're talking about AI, like cognitive offloading and having a brainiac assistant. So why do those ideas matter, and how do they help educators really better understand that there's some massively impactful potential in AI?
Goodness, that's a very attentive comment. I do. I guess I do. I think a big part of this comes down to communication, right? I won't claim that I am the AI expert in Silicon Valley, spending every waking hour building these tools, right? The specialty for my work comes into being able to communicate this in a way that actually feels applicable for educators, right? For our leaders.
Yep.
So with that comes, I have to figure out the ways that vividly you can start to imagine how this could tie in or frames it in a specific way. So that's the answer to the first question. I would say the cognitive offloading piece, I'm not taking credit for that one. I think cognitive offloading might even be a second podcast conversation that we have alongside a teacher who likes AI and a teacher that doesn't like AI. I think that would be a lot of fun, actually.
Oh, we should, you know what? Let's put a pin in that, because that would be a fun one.
That would be a really fun one. Not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but I just did a special board session with a school district not too long ago, and they brought students in. And you want to hear about how these tools are being used? Bring some students in. I had my eyes pleasantly opened to the fact that there are teachers already adapting their course plans to match and meet where students are right now. And also make sure that even though AI exists, their students are still being forced to think critically and creatively. And they gave some examples of that. So we can talk about that another time. But the reason why I utilize those examples kind of comes down to just what I said, actually. That might have been a great transition point. My goal is to make sure that teachers get these light bulb moments of, oh, so when I logged into ChatGPT, I just saw an empty box that said, what can I help you with today? And I didn't really know what it could help me with. Like, that's a really vague question. I didn't know it could do A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, right? And the more of those light bulb moments that I can stack up, whether it's doing communications, whether it's doing research on new programs or new lesson plans or materials, and giving me those exact links, and then attaching them to standards, and then giving me video examples of other teachers implementing them. People don't know that that's doable, right? So my job is to let people know what they can accomplish. And the way that I can get them to do that excitedly is it's not going to happen by me talking at somebody. It's going to happen by me listening, hearing what they said that they're struggling with, and me trying to find a solution for that struggle to get them bought in and feel like they're building it for themselves. Because at the end of the day, these tools are building themselves. The way, at least in the way that we interact with them currently, they build themselves around you. The memory feature is not a slight thing inside of ChatGPT. Those that use it know that it's pretty significant.
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge.
You should, if you're listening to this right now, hit pause, go to chat, and go ask it to roast you based on what it knows about you. But those I sound like a broken record, but utilizing those metaphors alongside how to help visualize, alongside just listening to the problems, that's how you win. I think way too often, tech people explain what a product is, explain what it can do, but they don't really talk about the value or how somebody's going to feel when they use it. And that's the special part.
I want to piggyback off that. Something that I've appreciated about what you've been doing is that you're not just focused on efficiency, you're focused on insight. So to that end, what you're talking about is making AI a tool that district leaders can use, not just to get things done faster, but to actually make better, more informed decisions. So can you talk a little bit about that?
100%. And that was the whole framing when I first got into education. This is an amazing question. So when I first got into the education space to try to find solutions, it was because of compliance, right? We're like, how can we get these reports done faster? How can we decrease the burden so that they're not just reports that get completed and then sit on the shelf outside of once or twice a year, but they're actually iterative. And that last part is really important. The goal for me is to utilize AI to start sharing best practices across an entire state. And when we look at how our systems are currently constructed, we have a lot of the initial building blocks of that, right? We have a lot of the data in some of our states. It's sitting in one place or another, and we have to bring it together. But we also, most states know what each of their districts are doing because it's reported to the state. Like, what are you spending your money on every single year? We know. And we generally know how that district is doing year over year. The goal here is to help showcase to a superintendent, hey, we know you're struggling with this student subgroup. Here's a district that looks just like you, has similar demographics, and they've shown some year-over-year improvement with that subgroup in that area. Here's what they're doing. List it out. Now you know exactly who to call. You can ask them about their implementation because we all know a good program doesn't matter. Good implementation. And now that shared insight is visible to everybody across the state. That is what I wake up and go to work excited about every single day. Like, if we can help make our educational leaders better experts by just giving them insights at their fingertips every single day, that's amazing. It's similar to what Conmigo's doing and what other tools are trying to do, which is a teacher, if they're utilizing an AI delivery for lesson plans and for homework and materials, the morning before class, they can say, hey, tell me what students struggled on last night's homework, and I want you to group them into groups based on the standards that they're struggling with. Great. Now give me a practice problem for each of those students. That has never been possible before, unless that teacher's waking up 4 hours early, going through the homework, grading it, grouping them, and then coming in with practice problems. We have that ability now. So the key is making sure that we get as many people as possible aware of what's possible. And then it also comes down to we have to have some people who want to get their hands dirty with rebuilding some systems and to help better equip everybody.
Yeah. Let's zoom out a bit. When you look ahead 5 or 10 years from now, what role do you hope that AI is playing, especially in rural education, because that's my lens. But what's that vision that you're working toward? You alluded to the possibilities that people might not know exist, but what does it look like 10 years from now?
Right now, people can feel this, and I think they felt it even before ChatGPT came out. AI is at its best when it's quiet and when it's almost invisible. What do I mean by that? Well, if we can have thoughtful implementation of these tools, 5 to 10 years, it should be making sure that everybody at our school sites can go home at 5 p.m. and not bring work home with them and get to enjoy time with their family and do the things that they want to do every day. That's on the teacher admin side. On the student side, we're already seeing the first steps into giving every single student a one-to-one tutor. So rural students get access to the same personalization as any student. We don't have access to tutors all the time, right? We have digital opportunities, but those can be expensive. And not always are they going to speak exactly to that student. We have the opportunity now with, and it always comes back down to this, thoughtful implementation. I think people are going to start asking, what do you mean by that? We can sit down and have a good conversation about it. We have to make sure that we have our coursework framed so that even though the students will go home and likely have access to, every student will likely, if they have internet, fingers crossed, because that's one of the things we got to focus on as well for access. We have to make sure that they're still being forced to think creatively and think critically. And that comes down to how we are instructing. I think a lot of teachers are excited about that right now. It's kind of like the silver lining of all of this. If we can get our students differentiated materials, that broadens the scope of what it means to be a creative or critical thinker. That sounds exciting to me. I think that sounds exciting to most people. So number one, making sure that we can get teachers and admin back to home and enjoying lives at 5 p.m. every day, with AI being a quiet partner that's assisting parts of their work every day. Students having that one-to-one tutor. And here's the last piece. There's a book I recommend everybody reads, especially people who are helping talk about AI. And the book's called 4,000 Weeks. 4,000 Weeks is by Oliver Berkman. He is a self-proclaimed recovering productivity guru. I think all of us, anybody listening to this probably relates to this. If you are somebody like me, you have a to-do list every day. And you are so attached to your to-do list. It's the first thing you check out in the morning. And if you complete something in the middle of the day that wasn't on that to-do list, you're adding it to that to-do list and checking it off because you should be getting credit for that to-do list item, right? One of the things about technology that's really dangerous, and I talked about this at AASA, is so back to the efficiency trap. Technology has saved us a lot of time. It's also sped up our days a lot. And the best example of that is, think of the washing machine. This is one of the examples in the book. The laundry machine pitch was, look at how much faster you can get a load of laundry done. You no longer have to do the old route of hand washing every piece of clothing. Look how much faster you get a load of laundry done. Look how much time you're going to save. What actually happened? One of two things. You did more laundry throughout the week. You really just didn't get the time back. You just reallocated it. Or even worse, you were able to throw it in, walk away, and go add 2 more chores to that to-do list, which made your to-do list get longer and made you feel more frantic. So here's my fear, and it's the reason why I wake up and do this work every day. I do fear that in the future, as we speed up even more with these tools, that people will just say, okay, if I can get this work done in half the time in my workday, well, let me add double the things into my workday. That's going to lead to more burnout than we've seen ever before. So one of the things I like to talk about a lot is, in tandem with AI being an invisible, quiet partner in a lot of our work, when I start to win you time back, what are you dedicating that time to? And that is actually something when I first go to a district, I stop before we get into the stuff, or it's at least in the first session. I want everyone to stop and think about, if I were to give you, just to start, 2 hours back in your week, what are you doing with those 2 hours? Just pause. Let people think about their answers. Just daydream. It might be playing around a golf. It might be spending time with the kids. It might be picking up a new hobby, finally picking the violin back up. Whatever it is, what are those 2 hours? And then I need you to be prioritizing that. And that comes top down. I think for everybody listening to this, hopefully the leaders are hearing this and going, one of the main things for AI implementation, I need to communicate it to my team that this is one of the first times. We always talk about how we can get time back for our teams. This is one of the first times that we can actually do that. And with that, as we get that time back, I want to communicate. I want you to be able to be more of a human as a result. Give you more time back to do the human things that you love and you enjoy outside of work, or maybe it's inside of work, things that you love, just brainstorming. Maybe you really, really want to research a new project, but you just don't have the time to do it. Being very conscientious of what you do with the time that we start to earn back 5 to 10 years from now. I hope that we have a world that when you do end work at 5, 6 p.m., you're able to go back and enjoy it. And so that's the world that I hopefully envision. I know there's a lot, kind of sum all that up. Everybody's able to get what they need to get done and go home and have a more humanist enjoyment of life. And every single student has a one-to-one personalized tutor that still forces them to work their way to the answers and not shortcut.
Yeah, I'm sure teachers across the country are going to definitely agree with you on that one.
I would hope.
Yeah, no kidding. So for rural leaders that are intrigued by AI, but just haven't started yet because they're just not sure where to start, what's your best advice for them taking that first step without getting overwhelmed? What do they want to do tomorrow to start this journey?
Okay. Go take your pick. ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Claude. I want you to, right now, either go on your phone, type in your notes app, or write it down on a piece of pen, a piece of paper. 3 things that you think AI could help you with. 3 things. And then just because I want to challenge you a little bit, I want you to do this on your phone. I want you to take a picture of it and then ask, how can you help me with these things? And start there. And then for your teams, this should be a collaborative experience. The key here is to not silo the learning. You want to have an open, innovative culture where people are able to share what they're doing with the tools. Because I guarantee you, you have team members, and I know you probably know the team members that are utilizing it the most.
Sure.
Sit down and do that same thing I talked about earlier, the strategic ties. Ask them what the first things that they would offload. Ask them what they're currently doing without AI in the picture, right? And then take that same frame of questioning. How can you help me on these items? That's a very baseline, very basic prompt to some people would say. I think that gets the job done, especially if you're just getting your feet wet with this. And then from there, the second thing I think is really fun is download a tool called Perplexity. It's an AI tool. It really helps with giving you references and resources. The reason why I think this next thing is fun is because all of us are curious people at our core. Mm-hmm. I know for a fact that there are things about the world, whether it be news or research or rabbit holes about, black matter in the universe. I don't know what it might be, but there's something out there that you're curious about. Go ask Perplexity that question. I use Perplexity probably every day to fact check, to go find additional resources. And I use it in tandem with ChatGPT. Both of them are on my phone home screen. So those 2 things I think do, number 1, how can it help you practically day in and day out? Number 2, how can it start to make you a more curious person? We have a world of information at our fingertips. It just takes you to ask.
Yep. Well said. Well said. So Christian, we're really excited that you're going to be keynoting at the ARSA annual conference this fall. So can you give our listeners kind of a sneak peek about what you're planning to share with them in Flagstaff?
A sneak peek about what I am planning to share with everybody. Can I think on this one for a couple minutes? Because it's kind of like the boilerplate pitch. What the sneak peek of what they're going to learn and what you're going to see is if I gave this presentation tomorrow or the day that you're watching this podcast, I would probably blow your mind at what's capable already. The fun part is this conference is in 4 months. So what we're going to be capable of in 4 months from now is going to be not just mind-blowing, but jaw-dropping. And I think the exciting part for each of us in our roles is my specialty is helping the decision makers in an organization figure out how they can not just help themselves with these tools, but come back looking like the magician and the wizard to everybody at the school site, right? Yeah. So what we're going to do as a team together is we're going to talk about how AI is affecting the world at large, how you can best prepare your teams to help prepare your students. And, well, I think it would be a win if I had you going back to the school sites looking like Harry Potter. You wield your your computer and your microphone as a magic wand.
Well, and hopefully that's enough to intrigue them because signups are happening now. So if you want that early bird pricing, you have until the end of May. And we hope to see you in Flagstaff September 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. So make sure that you head on over to our website and check out the registration page. So Christian, I want to wrap up with the question that I ask all of my guests here on the Rural Scoop, and that is, what does the term rural advantage mean to you?
The term rural advantage, and I've picked up on this and going all the way from the tippy top of California up and down near the border of California. The power of tight-knit teams cannot be understated. When you know your community inside and out, you have the ability to unlock creativity that nobody else can really reach, right? So in this world that we're going into, especially with this conversation with AI, the number one thing that we can empower ourselves with is creativity. And I think our tight teams having really fast feedback cycles and really bad feedback loops, I mean, the advantage there in a rural community is unmatched. So that's the rural advantage that I see. I think that comes down to agility and I would say authenticity. And that's what you get.
I love that answer. Thank you for that. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground today and some pretty deep stuff. So before we end, I want to have you do our rural roundup. So just a few quick questions to get to know you a bit better. We're on the lighter side of things. No pressure, just whatever comes to mind first. Okay. Are you ready?
Easy.
Okay. Well, maybe I can trip you up. I don't know. All right. So morning person or night owl?
Oh my goodness. I'm a recovering night person. I'm a recovering night person who's trying my hardest to be a morning person.
That's a good answer. First job you ever had?
I told you I bought those shades to open my blinds up when I wake up, right?
There's a reason, right?
There's a reason. First job I had?
Mm-hmm.
The first job I had was cold calling. I was cold calling for my dad's logistics company for trucks. I was cold calling down and throughout the country, mostly in the South, to try to help get loads.
All right. Favorite school lunch growing up?
Favorite school lunch, I would say, oh, that's a good one. My middle school had pickup sticks on Wednesdays. And
we'll go with
that
it.
was a go-to. That was a go-to.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. Okay, this is harder than the other questions you asked, Melissa. This is way harder. I'm going to go with, a lot of people say reading minds, but I feel like that would cause a lot of anxiety. Like I probably would never use that power if I had it. I would say superpower, I would love to teleport.
Okay. If you had to give AI a human name, what would it be?
I know this is a rapid fire round, but you're making me think more than I thought on all the other questions. All right, the AI name I would get, you know what? Somebody gave me this one on Monday, so I have to steal it and I'll give them credit. Xenia, Chata.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So what's your go-to soundtrack or playlist when you're in work mode?
Oh, good one. Okay, this is easy. This is some avant-garde, upbeat jazz. My great-grandma born in Kansas City, and she came up with John Coltrane, Miles Davis, and the likes. Yeah, she's 96, not too far down the road, and that's the inspiration there.
What's a non-tech hobby or passion that keeps you grounded?
Back to music. I think my number one hobby right now is finding old music, and just finding new music. I love music. In high school, I almost pivoted away from being a film guy into going into the music space. Like I love
That's
music.
awesome.
In particular, that's why I love jazz. I love music where my brain can start to pick up on the different layers and pay attention to a different layer in the song.
Oh, Nice. All right, last one. If you weren't working in ed tech, what would you be doing?
Movies.
Wow. All right. Throw it back to your dad.
Yeah, my goal in college, and the reason I went to the university I went to was I was an entrepreneurship student, but they also had a really good film school. So my goal was to do business and then learn how to have my own production company.
Very nice. Well, I would say that you probably, with all of the time you're saving with AI, might get a chance to do both.
Hey, you know what? If we can end up opening up a production company sometime in my 30s, I'll be a happy camper.
Well, Christian, thank you for such an energizing and insightful conversation. You brought a lot of clarity and practicality, I think, to a topic around which we really need to talk about, which is AI, especially in our rural spaces where leaders are doing so much with so little. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. And honestly, thank you for the questions. It was a very good time. And those were some amazing questions I got to talk about. So hopefully we can do this again soon, and we'll see everybody down in September.
All right. And for those of you that are listening, I hope that this conversation gave you some new ways to think about how AI can serve and not just replace what we do in schools, whether it's saving time or reducing back office burden or just making leadership feel a little bit more human again. There's really a lot of potential there. And don't forget, Christian will be our keynote speaker at the 2025 ARSA Annual Conference in Flagstaff this September. And it's going to be an incredible opportunity to dig even deeper into the ideas that we talked about today. And we can't wait to welcome you there. So thanks for joining us on the Rural Scoop. Until next time, keep leaning into the rural advantage.
Thank you so much for listening to the Rural Scoop. Please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, or even leave us a comment. And be sure to follow on Twitter at Dr. Sadorf. That's Dr_SADORF, so that you never miss a new release. You can also check out previous episodes of The Scoop wherever you get your podcasts. Production support for The Rural Scoop is provided by Chattanooga Podcast Studios. Find out more at ChattanoogaPodcastStudios.com. See you next time for more great discussions about rural education.